Smarter man than us.
First time I did it, I won. So I should have stopped then.
Yeah, me too.
Steve
And
White.
I did it. San 124s did the 120-mile course, and I was on the San 124.
Whoa! Come on, Kev.
Yeah, no.
That's back in
Field
the
Sail. Alden Bank. It's a long way down there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Sisters Island is a long ways away in the San 124. So I have a rigging company. I've been in this business for about 35 years. And this is sort of a standard checklist that we do on every rig inspection we do. And I'll just kind of quickly run through it. And then I'll touch on a few things. And anybody that wants to ask questions, great. So the first thing we do when we get on board is look at what kind of mast is on board, whether it's painted or whether it's natural, whether it's anodized, what condition it's in, whether it has lots of pitting and corrosion on it, whether there are any dents or cracks or anything like that. And then we start looking at all the attachment points. So we check gooseneck fittings, boom vang attachments, main sheet attachments, and then start working our way up the mast. So we check the vertical and horizontal pins on goosenecks to make sure that they're not worn, which they usually are, especially if you've had your boat for more than 10 years. Chances are there's a fair bit of play in those joints. And we check the condition of the lugs on the end of the boom, the lugs on the mast, whether they're welded or attached mechanically. And then we just start going up the rig. So we start chain plates, turnbuckles, swages to see whether the swages are cracked or not, or whether the turnbuckles are in good shape. And I'm just going to start passing some tortured boat parts around. And if you just pile them at the back of the room or bring them back up here, that's fine.
Yeah, all of these are off Catalina 27.
That's right. This is just the Catalina 27 demo.
Nothing that thick ever came off the Catalina.
So I'm going to pass this around, but if you look on the side of this fitting, you'll see there's a giant crack on the swage.
That's a force thing.
And I think there's a crack on this one too, which we're going to start it that way. And this turnbuckle, which I'm going to pass around, if you look at it, it's broken in half right there.
So when we're looking at a turnbuckle, other than it not being broken in half right there, what is it we should be looking at to make sure that it's going to hold our mast up?
Well, you should make sure that it's in decent shape. You should make, put my glasses on.
This one appears to be perfect.
So the piece that's right here right now is sort of the classic swage failure. So what that swage is it's a hollow tube you push the wire into, gets put in the machine and rolled on top, so it basically just squashes on top of the wire. So when it cracks like that, eventually that crack's going to open up and the wire's going to pull out of the thing.
Trevor mentioned that the crew should be looking at the safety gear on the boat. Is this the kind of thing you think the crew should look at? Is this,
well, like, you know, it's difficult. But one thing I would recommend for anybody, whether you're doing this race or just going sailing, is if you have plastic turnbuckle boots on your boat so that your turnbuckles are hidden away, look and see what's inside there. Because most people never look. They've got these nice plastic boots there, they just cover the turnbuckles up and everybody's happy. But you'd be amazed at what you find underneath there. And the other thing that, if you have them on board, you should probably get rid of are the nice plastic, split plastic guards that you put on the wire for the bottom 6 feet so that they're easy to hang on to. Just rip them off. Because you can't see what's underneath there.
Then the moss will fall on my deck.
That's right. That's right. The moss just goes away.
A little louder, Steve.
Sorry.
Came off.
And then somewhere on one of these pieces of wire with the black tape on top is a broken strand, which is the other thing we check. So just where the wire goes into the top of this swage fitting, if there's very much movement in there, you'll find that the strands start to break off right at the top of the swage fitting. So what I have to do is just torque the wire if you're looking at it, grab a hold of it, and just push it with your thumb as hard as you can in every direction. And if there's a broken strand in there, it'll pop out of the top of the swage. So that's sort of the other classic failure.
Then you're skiing on the weekend.
All right, where are we here?
Hey Steve, how often should we have the rig inspected? I mean, that depends on what you're doing, obviously, but you know, more than every 30 years, eh?
Yeah, more than
like Sarah goes from 1974, just as a baseline.
I would say that if your boat's more than 15 years old and you haven't had it inspected, you should do it right away. If it's, and then you should do it every probably 5 years. And but that's assuming that you keep on top of things. You know, if you're not going to do any maintenance, or you're not going to look at anything, nobody's going to help you out, right? So you have to be responsible for it yourself. But it's a good idea to have somebody come down, and if anybody wants one of these forms, I'll be happy to email it to you so you can do it yourself. It's just got all the points that you should check on.
I have a question for you, if I may jump ahead here.
Yep.
This picture on the left-hand side here is something that, no, it's left, right, so your right hand. Okay, my right-hand side, stage left.
Stage left. This is called hiking.
Hiking.
Yeah.
Hiking. Now this is what none of my crew ever do, but I live in constant fear that one day they might do that, and I don't trust my lifelines. I can imagine if they were actually to do that, which would involve putting their beer down and actually getting to the windward rail. Were my lifeline to let go, that would put a lot of people in the water and or weight on the jack line. Is there an easy way to determine if my lifelines are good for my crew to do that?
No.
No, right.
Yeah, easy way, buy new ones.
The simple answer to that question, if you heard it, was, is there an easy way to check and see if my lifelines are good? And the answer is no. And now, coated lifelines are no longer allowed for racing. I think they're still grandfathered if you have them.
Yeah.
But if you have a new boat, you can't have coated lifelines. So one of the things that happens when you go from coated lifelines, which are made up of 7 by 7 or 7 by 19 wire, which are 7 strands wrapped around 7 or 7 by 19, you end up with very small strands. So now they're all going to 1 by 19 wire, which is the same as rigging. So the strands are basically 5 times as large a diameter each strand. So they're less likely to fail, but they're also not as flexible. So if you're power hiking like that, I'd replace my lifelines.
Which, if any of my crew are in the room, could you please look at this, because this is what I need to keep my boat flat.
Desire.
Brent, you get Brent. Right there.
Yeah, but
Repeat your last sentence.
Repeat
Repeat your last sentence.
I'm supposed to repeat my last sentence. If you power hike like that, replace your lifelines every year.
Yeah.
Because they're less stretchy.
No, because they're going to break, and all your crew can end up in the water.
So we have to go back and get them?
Yes.
It's a legal requirement. Okay.
So there's some things on this list I'm not really going to touch on tonight, but we check them all the time anyways. So we check standing rigging all the way up the mast. So we go up the mast to the very top, check all the spreaders, make sure they're tight on the mast, properly attached. All of the stay attachment points are intact and good, and there's no cracking up there, everything's still where it's supposed to be. We just took the rig out of a J109 about 2 months ago, and everything was all nicely taped up, and we took the lower bottom starboard spreader off. One of the 2 pins that holds it to the mast, the spreader was fractured, and you couldn't see it with the tape on. And I'm going to pass these 2 pictures around. So this picture, the darker of the 2 pictures, is what we found underneath the spreader boot when we took it off. And this picture is what it's supposed to look like. And that can go with it.
Well, so far,
So this is the lower spreader on the CNC 33, I think. So it has discontinuous rigging, so there's a rod that goes to the lower spreader. There's a joint there. There's an an intermediate stay that goes up, and another rod that keeps going up.
Alfie, take a good look at that
So
one.
it's a pretty critical joint in the mast. And one of the problems with having spreaders all taped up and nicely cocooned in there is it's a perfect breeding ground for corrosion. So if you have chafe protection on the end of your spreaders, it's a good idea to go up there every year or two, take it off, see what's in there, and put it back on. But a lot of spreaders need chafe protection because they're just too sharp. So just get up there and check it, or have somebody go up there and check it, to keep on top of it.
What's the cost of having someone to come to inspect a mast?
Well, a typical rigging inspection that we do is about $150 in round numbers.
So hard night at the bar basically saves your rig.
Maybe for a weaseler. It's not expensive, and I prefer to do them with the owner present. So if there's an issue, you can look at it right away. I'd say about half the time that works, and half the time it doesn't. So. And then the other thing you need to sort of keep a handle on is your running rigging. I did one of these races a number of years ago with a fairly well-known boat at the time. I'd never really sailed on the boat, but I knew them quite well. It was a breezy race. We broke 2 of our 4 halyards before we got to Point Atkinson. So we had we had 118 miles to go or whatever. We only lost 2 of our halyards.
Yeah, is that why they invited you?
Yeah. So this piece of rope, I found this piece of rope on somebody's boat one day, and I just grabbed it because
That looks like my check stake.
yeah. Not only is it ugly, but if you look at this piece of rope, the sort of clean end is what the original diameter was when it was manufactured. And the rest of it is what it is now. And it's about probably 25 or 30% bigger. And it's just because it's tortured. And it's got salt in it, and it has dirt in it.
Are you a fan of end for ending halyards? So when one gets bigger, you just take it out, turn it around, the other end in?
No. I just replaced it. I'm sure. Yeah. The other sort of really simple general rule about rope is this fleck that's in there is a different material. So most rope covers these days are made out of polyester or something else. But the fleck is not. It's made out of polypropylene usually, or a lower grade of polyester. So if the flecks on your rope are no longer there, it's time to replace them. It's past time to replace them.
Can we repeat that again? The fleck is no longer there?
Then the rope is toast. Right?
What happens to the fleck?
The fleck just gets bleached out by the UV. Right?
So
But quite often, if you go down to when we go down to boats that nobody's used for a long time, the part of the rope that's coming out of the mast from the masthead down to the deck looks terrible. And the part from the mast base to the cockpit looks terrible. And the part inside is perfect. So,
Can I ask you a question? Just back to the standing rigging. We hear about boats like Ian Lloyd's boat, Fancy Free, which is a beautiful boat. It was a beautiful boat, and I believe he lost his mast in some heavy blows. Is that? I could be incorrect if I am. I'm sorry. But what is the cause of that? Is it like what? And what happens when you drag the spinnaker? And so, is that something that could have been prevented with running rigging, or is the halyard just too high up and it's going to take it down anyway?
yeah, something like that's probably just overloaded the rig, and it's not designed for it.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's pretty uncommon to have wire failure from something pulling out of the swage. You know, it has to be very neglected for that to happen. It's more common to have a fitting break up top. So something will break where the stay's attached to the mast, or a spreader fails, or something like that. But for the actual rigging to fail is fairly unusual.
So let's say somebody had 1984, I don't know, hot foot 31 with the original standing rig.
Good example.
Just to throw that out there. Maybe named Thursday's child.
And why?
And I just came to me. Is there a circumstance under which 30-year-old rigging is okay? Or are we looking at a full replacement?
Well,
My heart can put you in the dog.
where we live in this part of the world, 30-year-old rigging is fairly typical.
Yes.
And
But
one
is
of
that
the
okay?
one of the reasons it's typical is that we get lots of rain, the water doesn't have very much salt in it, and we don't have sun.
Almost.
And we hardly have any pollution.
It's the cold hard reality where we live, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've seen boats come from Florida and California, and people go and buy these boats, and they go, "Oh, we got such a great deal. We bought this boat, and it only cost this much money." And they bring it up, and it's 5 years old, and the rig looks like it's been in the boat for 40 years. You know, it's just everything on top is fried. All the shiv boxes and tow boats that ever came into this area that didn't have turnbuckles on.
CSs are?
CS.
Is that a good thing?
Well, if you maintain it, it's fine. The reasoning for it was, when these boats were built and the designer was English and had been doing this forever, and this was the days of RDF, like radio direction finders. This was before GPS, before LORAN, before any of these electronic instruments, and RDFs, if you have lifelines permanently attached, would interfere with the signal. So if they lashed them, then it broke the circuit.
Oh, really?
But the problem is that most of the CS-36s and 33s around here have not a rope that's been there for 30 years. You know, it's ready to break.
The PIOF rules say you have to change that lashing once a year
Yeah.
to be compliant.
The problem is upholding that, right?
Yeah.
It's a spectral line. It's just bleached white.
Yeah, if you have a blue Spectra line that's not blue anymore, it's probably a good time to do it. Because Spectra is actually white as a natural fiber, and they just dye it. Right? So if it's blue or red or gray, it's been dyed. And it's not particular. It doesn't have particularly good UV properties if it's not dyed. I mean,
We've got to move on somewhat quickly, but I have one last question for you. A couple of the boats I've been on recently have had aluminum masts and original wire halyards. Is that an issue with, how do we feel about stainless steel halyards and aluminum masts? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do we not care at all?
don't care at all.
Cool.
Well, don't care at all as long as they're maintained, because there's always a splice there, so you need to look at the splice. And we haven't really touched that much on running rigging, but you know, it's a good idea to take the tail of your halyard that's in the cockpit, attach it to the shackle that pulls the sail up, and pull it all the way to the top and see what's actually inside the mast. Yeah. Especially with the wire to rope halyard. Because what happens is the wire goes up inside the rope for about 18 inches, and then it's spliced together. But if there are things starting to stick out at that transition point, then it's time to replace it.
Cool.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.